World Class comes along. It exceeded anything that any of us ever had imagined.
It was wrestling taken to a whole nother level.
Texas Stadium, 40,000 people. Cotton Bowl, 30 or 40,000 people.
They'd have to get police dogs to get us out of buildings, and I mean, girls would be fainting. It was wild, unbelievable. We didn't deserve any of that. It just happened. It was like a big blessing. Then in a way, maybe kind of turned into a monster.
The death of David Von Erich was the beginning of the end for World Class Championship Wrestling.
And Mike killed himself.
I'm listening to the radio, and I heard Von Erich tragedy strikes again. Chris Von Erich found dead.
It was a tragedy more than this great wrestling show.
The Von Erichs died off, and the show died.
Hi, you wrestling fans. This is Best Box again with Texas Wrestling from promoter Ed McLemore's Sportatorium in Dallas.
Dallas wrestling goes back a long way. The Sportatorium was built in 1934. There were great wrestling stars: Danny Savage, Duke Kiwanuka, Dizzy Davis, Jumbo Jack Kennedy. Those are names probably some of you people will not recognize, but in the Dallas area, you will remember that.
Week in and week out, you'll see the very best here at the Sportatorium in Dallas. These Southwestern wrestling fans like the going hot and heavy, rough and fast. If a man can't take it as well as dish it out, he doesn't stay in Texas match circles very long.
Texas has always supported athletics, whether it's rodeo, high school football, or wrestling.
They lived for Friday nights.
My dad would take me early. Get off of Friday nights. The routine would be we'd go to eat in Texas chicken fried steak, get some iced tea, he'd cash his check, we'd go to wrestling.
Professional wrestling was, for many people, a way of life. And in many of the smaller towns, it was their only entertainment that came through, save the circus once a year.
You know, every week here at the Sportatorium in Dallas, promoter Ed McLemore presents the nation's outstanding wrestling talent. Some of the finest wrestlers in the entire country show right here at the Sportatorium.
If you go back to when I started here in the 1950s, it was 2 falls out of 3, and a lot of headlocks held for a long time on the mat.
Before Jack Atkinson, before Fritz Von Erich, the people that were before him, they were great wrestlers and everything, but nobody had the impact this man had.
He brought an enthusiasm and a type of physical activity that was, I guess you could say, enormous.
My dad was a football player at SMU, a good athlete, a big guy, he's a discus thrower too. My dad had the Southwest Conference record and stood for like 20 years. And they were going to use him on the Olympic team, but he got married. And back then, you couldn't be on the Olympic team and be married to, or the school wouldn't have paid for his trip. You know, it was in Finland, in Helsinki. And he couldn't afford to go on his own, so he didn't go. But he did have a throw that was a good enough throw to place in the Olympics. As a matter of fact, it would have won it too. Back then, things were a lot different, evidently, and being married, the school couldn't send him. He went from SMU down to the University of Corpus Christi because you could be married and still be in the AAU then, you know. And so he was down there, and his parents lived in Dallas, my grandparents, and he was coming up through Dallas, and he was looking for work. You know, he was a fireman, and then he was a detective, and he just did anything for work. And he talked to Ed McLemore. He was the guy that had the Sportatorium, had Dallas, started off working underneath matches and doing Ed's taxes, doing the taxes for the Sportatorium there. And he really had something, you know, he had appeal, he had charisma in the ring.
Bashara waits at least until the count of 4 to break his hold. That way he gets the maximum out of it. Looks like Atkinson may have lost the temper a little bit. Watch those knuckle blows now, Jack. Don't get disqualified.
but he was still just Jack Adkisson. He wasn't the German, he wasn't Fritz von Erich. So he went up and worked for Ed a while and then came up here to Niagara Falls. My brother Jackie and I had just been born. And my brother, my oldest brother, a lot of people don't know this, Jack Adkisson Jr. was electrocuted in 1959 in Niagara Falls. And it did something to my dad. He quit being, he wasn't like Jack Adkisson anymore. He even changed his name. He was a German. He was so ferocious in the ring. He was like, he wanted someone to kill him, I think. He just didn't want to be alive anymore, but he wanted, to punish himself or something, and punish other people too. So he just wanted to get back to Dallas. He was going to open a bait shop in Corpus Christi is what he's going to do going through. And wound up stopping off at the Sportatorium on the way back to wrestle. And it just clicked. He was Fritz von Erich then, and he never really looked back.
From Berlin, Germany, weighing 269, Fritz von Erich.
He was quite remarkable when you saw him. He was big, rough, domineering, outspoken, wanted to intimidate you if he could. He was very hard to wrestle. You had to fight him or he would beat you down.
Warhead von Erich is a big one, though. His thighs must be 30 inches around and remarkably agile for his size.
He's a really rugged type guy, one of probably the most rugged individuals that you'd ever step into the ring with.
Von Erich has always reminded us of a cornered animal who fights back savagely, and that's the way he operates.
His wrestling style was just beat the hell out of somebody.
Von Erich, he's as mean as he looks. And boy, he's as big as he's mean.
And he had a finishing hold, the claw, which was over probably a segment to very few finishing holds ever in the business.
I got the idea that originally in Japan, from an old sumo friend of mine over there, about the temple, and they knew the strength of this hand. It was getting stronger all the time, and that's where the idea came from. I was really waiting for the opportune time to do it. It didn't come along for maybe 20 or 30 matches later.
He goes for that hold again. That's a new one he's developed, apparently, because we haven't seen it. He digs right in there with both hands. I think the bout is over. I think Bobby Brown has called it a night.
I think, without a doubt, he was the best of the Von Erichs. My dad was a real good wrestler, good psychologist, and knew exactly what he was doing.
Just as he was a domineering wrestler, he was a domineering force in professional wrestling as a promoter in Dallas.
In 1965, the booking office for the Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, and Houston was controlled out of the Houston wrestling office, Morris Siegel and Paul Boesch.
When Fritz came, Ed McLemore and Fritz made a huge move and broke away from Houston.
And several years later, Ed McLemore had a series of heart attacks, and one of them was fatal, and Fritz became the sole owner of Southwest Championship Sports.
Fritz became the man. He was the big cog. He was the guy that had the territory.
As a promoter, Fritz would have been better known as a wrestler than a promoter. Fritz wasn't a promoter like Vince McMahon would be, or a Paul Boesch or a Jim Barnett. He was mainly known as a wrestler who happened to be a promoter.
As the owner, he could trust his top superstar not to walk out on him because it was one the same. And that was the theory that many of the old promoters / top stars had.
For instance, Vern Gagne was the owner and also the top star in the AWA. Eddie Graham, the same situation in the Florida territory. And of course, we had a similar situation down in Memphis. And the reason that usually comes about is because when you own the territory, when you own the company, I mean, that's your not only your baby, but that's your livelihood. And so it's hard to trust that top spot to someone who is not going to be as passionate about the welfare of your company as you are.
He was a very powerful man.
Screw him.
Screw him. Elaborate.
Yeah, he went to the bank.
He went to the bank?
Yeah.
You did too. You bought his car.
Yeah. Well, Fritz was okay. He was like every other promoter.
Right.
He sat up there and bossed everybody around
and made all the money.
Made all the money. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not disrespecting Fritz. I'm just saying that we were getting screwed back then really bad.
He ran his promotion the same type way that he competed in the ring, very aggressive.
He promoted wrestling as a wrestling and did a very, very good job with it.
Fritz liked perfection, just like any successful man. Fritz needed to know that you could get the job done out there.
He had the air about him when he walked in that he was the man, he was important.
He was huge. Everybody got out of the way when he came through. At first, when you first met him, he was a big guy, came through, had this deep voice, and of course, everybody got out of his way. But as you got to know him, and you met him a few times, and he found out who you were, he actually turned into a very nice guy.
He became a legend here. He was a legend. And his sons followed in his footsteps.
He was a great wrestler. He knew exactly what he was doing in the ring, and as far as a promoter, he was great at that too. My dad was a great guy, a great man, a good man, and it makes me mad sometimes when people think that everyone wants to tell the story that Big Mean Fritz beat the kids up and made us wrestle and made us do things we didn't want to do. It's not true. He didn't make us do anything. He was a good man, a really good father too. I had such a good time with my brothers. We would go out and spearfish off a reef for hours and hours, just hover over the water and put the fish in the boat. And we all hunted, we all fished. Man, we had fun together.
These boys have been trained in the gym out at the house. We have a 600 square foot of weights, wrestling mats, and boxing paraphernalia, the whole bit. It's really great to watch these guys come up from just young'uns up to where they are right now. And in my opinion, every one of my sons, Kevin, Kerry, David, at one time or the other, sometime in the future, will be a world heavyweight champion.
David was a tremendous basketball player. Kevin was a tremendous football player on the college level. Kerry, I think, was a nationally ranked discus thrower.
David, Kevin, Kerry, fantastic athletic ability when their background is basketball and football players.
Kerry and Dave and I were the closest. Dave and I were so busy with football and then wrestling that we really didn't have time to bring Mike up like we would have wanted to. So Kerry pretty much raised Mike and Chris.
They were good, strong, tough athletes.
And it would only be natural for them to want to pursue in their father's footsteps.
They took to wrestling. It was in their blood.
We knew that eventually one of the boys would be in wrestling, but we didn't know all of them.
It's your family's livelihood. I think it's a natural fit for all of them.
First one I really met was Kevin in the dressing room. He's standing there, and I said to him, "So, you wanted to be a wrestler, huh, kid?" And Kevin looked right at me and he said, "No, I never did want to be a wrestler. I wanted to be a football player."
I was playing ball at North Texas, and so during the season, I would play football, and during the off-season, I'd wrestle.
Kevin kind of set the tone for the run of the dynamic Von Erich crew.
After a year of that, Dave came on as a wrestler, but Dave kept wrestling. He stayed in the business, dropped out of college, was a wrestler, a great wrestler too, good psychology, knew how to work the people and how to do an interview. He was really gifted, like Dad was.
Hey, there ain't no place but Texas, baby. I'm glad to be home.
I think that David Von Erich probably was the best ring general of them all.
And so Dave really started before I did because I played so much football back then that Dave was wrestling all that time. He was more experienced than I was, even though I started first.
There's something magic when Kevin and I are in that ring together. We know it, baby, and we'll take on any challengers for this belt because Texas can show the All-Asian and the whole world how we're #1, baby.
David didn't have the charisma and the good looks of Kevin. But when it came to in-ring talent and interviews, I believe David was the superior one.
We wrestled for about 2 years together. Kerry was throwing the discus for University of Houston and had the farthest throw for under 19 years old. In fact, he had the world record at it. And that was the year that Jimmy Carter boycotted the Olympics.
One of the finest high school athletes that the state of Texas has ever produced. Kerry Von Erich.
So all the people that were throwing as far as Kerry were, you know, the East Germans and the Russians both had great discus throwers. Kerry couldn't compete against them, you know, and so rather than wait another 4 years and to go in the Olympics the next go around, he went ahead and came into wrestling.
Kerry, he had the charisma and the looks of his older brother Kevin, but at the same time, he had a lot of the in-ring ability that David had.
From then, it was just the three of us for a long time until we finally brought Michael on, but it was really the three of us wrestled all over the place.
All three great wrestlers just following in the footsteps of their immortal father.
We had some wrestling matches together, you know, tag teams, four-man tags and things like that. So Dad wrestled a little bit with us. He was getting older. He didn't have to get in the ring anymore. We were drawing, and there wasn't any reason for him to do that. I was never one for a wrestler getting in the ring, and when your time comes and goes, that's nothing sadder to see somebody, you know, its time is gone, and they're the only one that doesn't get it.
Well, it was kind of tough to see Fritz stop wrestling. You know, he was beat up and arthritic.
So we kind of talked him into it, and he did get out of it.
You know, it all started when I was a Mustang at SMU and played ball there, and then a brief stint of professional football, right into wrestling. I guess it seems appropriate that my last match will be on a football field right at Texas Stadium.
That was the first big stadium show that we had here.
You know, a huge crowd, Texas Stadium, and back then people didn't have matches in football stadiums.
Retiring tonight from professional wrestling after an illustrious career from Lake Dallas, Texas at 270 pounds, the immortal Fritz Von Erich.
Well, it was a big deal that Fritz Von Erich was retiring, you know. Everyone knew that. It was like, it's the last time we're going to be able to see this guy.
This is for the American Heavyweight Championship, a belt that Fritz Von Erich at one time held longer than any other human being in the history of wrestling.
I can't tell you what it was like in that match.
Fritz comes back with a chair, and Bundy is in real trouble. Across the top of the head.
Dad brought a pretty big crowd in there for his retirement match.
Fritz Von Erich wins the American Heavyweight Championship in the end zone at Texas Stadium.
I believe it was a good decision for him to back away completely and allow his children to be the main guys in his organization.
Each of these boys
There they are
gonna be world heavyweight champions.
Well, we got 5 of them.
I'm dedicating my life to it.
Fritz then was developing this promotional part of himself more than ever and really taking charge of it. The boys were supposed to come along and take that over later on.
Difficult in a booking situation because you have 3 Von Erichs on every card. A lot of wrestlers resented the fact that the boys were being pushed so hard, and it was easy to say they're getting the push because of their father and who their father is.
Fritz Von Erich's had many proud moments throughout his wrestling career, and I'll tell you what, to see all 3 sons wrestling together, there's probably no prouder moment than that for him.
They weren't little kids that their father protected. I mean, these boys, they would fight anyone who didn't show them respect. They had great, huge, gigantic balls.
I have the time now to go ahead and devote to my sons. As you know, they're in demand all over the world now, and I can work with them. As I've stated before, I want my kids to enjoy this great business, this great industry like I have.
I would imagine there was a lot of prodding. At the same time, I would imagine it probably didn't take much because the boys idolized their dad, like most sons do.
They're the Von Erichs. You know, they're the sons of the superstar in your town. He was bigger than the football team. I mean, there wasn't any Dallas football, but there was Fritz Von Erich, and he was bigger than they were. And so those guys lived up there in Lake Dallas. They were gods.
The greatest name in professional wrestling today, the Von Erichs, have been for years.
He knew, he being Fritz, that he was building a franchise.
The boys are doing great, and I'm very, very proud of them.
And I guess Fritz Von Erich, as a promoter, realized that, hey, you know what, other wrestlers might leave me, but my kids aren't going to leave me. I can count on my children. And Fritz marketed them as stars, and they were believable.
The thing is, they filled up arenas. Kevin, when he started, he looked like he walked right out of a movie set. Body ripped, I mean, handsome. Women went crazy.
Here are two of the greatest draws in professional wrestling.
It could be that we're just young kids.
The one and only Von Erich boys.
Wrestlers all around the world had gimmicks. You project some type of image, but we didn't have to do that. In fact, by not having gimmicks, that was a great gimmick, because we were the only guys that had that gimmick. You know, that we were ourselves.
I was shocked and amazed at how over the Von Erich kids were in Texas.
The Von Erich boys became folk heroes at a very young age.
My goodness, you're Fritz Von Erich, you're one of the Von Erichs. They were demand everywhere. And consequently, Channel 11 that we had it, and then Channel 39 here in Dallas, it was going out, and it was almost like WTBS, like a superstation at that time.
Right here on Channel 39.
We had KTVT, Channel 11 in Fort Worth, which was our flagship station, but because of the power of world-class television, it opened so many doors.
It started around Texas, and then they move out to another state, another state, another state, and all of a sudden, it just was beyond comprehension.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Gene Goodson with World Class Championship Wrestling. And when you see these matches, you'll know that that's the truth.
We were in places that we weren't even supposed to be because our show was pirated out in the Middle East, you know, and so we're getting letters from Kenya and Taiwan and places we weren't supposed to be. So we wound up putting our show pretty much everywhere. All these people wanted our show. They want to know, how can we get it legally, you know? And so we started syndicating, and things went real well.
Probably in almost 3/4 of the country, you know, as far as syndication.
Somebody had the vision to see there was a bigger world out there than just Dallas.
And the boys wanted to go. They wanted to take off and go nationwide with it. But see, Fritz was an old timer, and the agreement was you stayed in your own yard. You didn't go in somebody else's backyard and try and run a show. That was the old style. But the new style was you followed your show wherever it went. Fritz wouldn't go. But Kevin, Kerry, they all wanted to go. He would not go. Now, looking back, you know, hindsight, 2020, that was a mistake. If he'd have gone, I think you'd see a different world out there as far as the wrestling industry at the moment.
The World Class Championship Wrestling syndicated show was a fresher approach.
I was amazed. There was 30, 40 people in the production crew, 7 or 8 cameras, all kinds of microphones placed on and around the ring, handheld cameras, guys up on the apron. That was all brand new. When they introduced that into wrestling, guys became bigger than life.
WCCW is the first people to really get in there that allowed you to see the emotions of the wrestlers, that allowed the wrestlers to become personalities that the audience could become emotionally invested in.
I mean, in World Class, you could hear a guy get hit and grunt. You could hear him breathe, you know? I mean, it was like more live than live.
Unheard of, unprecedented at that time.
It was wrestling taken to a whole nother level.
It had a different feel to it, and they were very innovative.
One of the first programs ever to do personality profiles, things outside of the ring that would let you inside, let you know what made the wrestlers tick.
We put in those features. One of them, in fact, Gorgeous Jimmy Garvin had to go out and work with David at the ranch, load hay and shovel dirt and manure and wash the dogs.
Hey, Garvin, don't forget to get under his ears real good now. Listen, I want you to know I'm only doing this because I have to, Von Erich. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here.
And my favorite was called out to do this water slide thing. And I'm in a sport coat, tie, and all of a sudden he pulls me in.
Do you have fun?
You should have a little fun, baby.
Well, I'm not Chris, but wait a minute.
And shoves me down.
Did you see Billy Bob?
And I go sliding down this water slide in my clothes. Then the camera people said, okay, we've got to set up on the various places and you have to go down 3 more times so we can get these shots of you going down. And that one turned out to be quite a thriller.
I think the fans are going to really be excited tonight. We have one of the greatest cards that the Sportatorium has ever had before. Don't forget the world-famous Sportatorium. If it's there, it's the best in professional wrestling.
The Sportatorium was a tin shed down on Industrial Boulevard in Dallas.
Probably the most famous shithole that anyone could ever imagine. On TV, it looked absolutely fabulous. But it was an old tin building with no AC.
Hot? Oh, geez, it was hot on hot Dallas days.
When it would rain, the roof would leak. It was very uncomfortable, especially with all the additional lights in the summer months. Sometimes it'd be 120, 130 degrees in the ring.
It was hot. I can't say enough how hot it was in that place. It was hot.
So, I mean, it was a historic landmark. I don't know why they tore it down.
It was a great building, and we thought that they'd make a historical landmark out of it. Would have paid for itself in 3 years, but nobody would buy it from that landlord, so that was it. I have at my house a piece of the siding they gave to me, and I love that building.
To me, the Sportatorium was a temple for wrestling.
The inside of the Sportatorium, if anyone was ever there, could appreciate the environment that it created as being like a Roman Colosseum.
We sold out the Sportatorium, I don't know how many times in a row on a Friday night, which is, during the fall, is Texas football night, which draws huge all over Texas. But we would draw and drew a new customer.
We want to say thanks to the people of Dallas, Texas, because it's the biggest crowd ever to be in the Sportatorium.
You never heard of anybody going to Texas to further their career. It was just dormant. Nothing was going on except the Von Erichs. They just didn't have, in the fans' eyes, in my opinion, competition. I went to Texas. I only went out there for 2 shows, and I hit it off right away with Gary Hart.
I offered Terry and Michael a job in Texas. You guys want to come to Texas? I can do really, really well with you.
And he booked me on their Star Wars shows, which was their big shows that they had quarter annually. I couldn't believe it when I got there and saw the crowd. I called Terry that night. I said, you need to finish up in Georgia. You need to get your ass down here. There's something going on here, and we need to do it.
I want everybody to know, like I said before, I'm not here by myself. Freebird is the double thing, and I got a brother that stands, walks, and talks right beside me. And the next time we come here, baby, we are coming here to get down, and my brother's gonna be right beside me.
And I think the wrestling fans were looking for something fresh and something new, and obviously we brought that.
I mean, Michael needs to get a lot of credit for stuff he's done over the years to help promotions along the way. And I mean, he really was very influential and really helped the promotion in Texas. I think Michael's the first guy who suggested musical entrances.
Michael Hayes played the song Going to the Ring, and I thought, man, that is sweet. If you were to crank that up a little louder and play it before the match, and then when the music comes into crescendo, kick the door open, I could feel that.
We broke the barrier with the rock and roll musical entrance.
And so we started to put some big old studio speakers in the Sportatorium. Makes the people on fire, and us too. I thought wrestling and rock music were just made for each other. And it was just madhouse. Not like you think. You may think that's fun, but after a few months, that gets old. Because you've got to walk to the ring with one hand down here to protect yourself, and then they're trying to kiss you, and so you're trying your best to keep your lips together, and it was a hard way to get to work every day.
The response at first, which I think made the whole angle work, was very positive towards the Fabulous Freebirds.
It's good to get down here in Dallas, Texas. I said at the beginning of the year that Freebird Fantasia was going to rock and roll all over this country, and it's about time we got here.
And we were buddies with the Von Erichs in and out of the ring, which was real, it just sucked everybody into the whole story.
Michael Hayes was such a personality. People really either wanted to love him or hate him.
He's got a semi-bad, semi-good, hasn't he? The crowd loves him, some of them hate him.
I think one of the greatest, and of course I'm going to be biased here, rivalries that ever took place in the history of our great industry was the Freebird Von Erich feud, and it all started Christmas night, 1982. Ric Flair versus Kerry Von Erich.
And special referee, Michael Hayes.
I was a little bit pushy as the referee.
Hayes is again for the 6th time getting physical and breaks the clock.
Finally, an opportunity comes. Flair hits me. I hit Flair back.
Well, Hayes has just really lost his composure. He's lost his composure completely.
Tell Kerry, take advantage of this, pin him. Kerry wouldn't do so, because that's the Texas thing to do. I grab Kerry, throw him on top of Flair. Pin him. Kerry gets up off the cover. That's when Terry Gordy, who was the gatekeeper outside, says, you know what, screw it, Michael, just come on, just leave him, let it go. Flair gets up behind Kerry, knees him in the back, which knocks Kerry into me, which knocks me out of the cage. So when I hit the floor and turn around, there's Kerry, and Flair's out of the scene. So my assumption is Kerry just hit me from behind, and that was the impetus for Terry to grab the door, slam it on Kerry's head, and as they say, the rest was history.
Oh, Kerry Butter hit in the head by that cage door. Oh, oh. Hayes has just totally lost his cool. He counted 3.
And we woke up, and I'll never forget, Gary Hart got a hold to us and called us and said, just so you know, I've quit.
Christmas week 1982, I helped the office get $250,000. For that $250,000, if I would tell you what the guy gave me, you'd probably never want to talk to me again. $3,500 for $250,000. I was sitting in my office, I'm looking at the check. I'm saying, this cannot be right. This cannot be right. We're in big buildings. Who helped get you there? Who built your talent? Who ran your business? And he says to me, I think you're too big for your britches. So I said, you can take this job and stick it up your ass.
It's like, what? We just did this big angle. I mean, we're ready to rock and roll. And then we thought, well, if Gary quit, then we're quitting. And Gary talked us into, no, not quitting. Go down and talk to Fritz. We went and talked to Fritz. Ken Mantell was there. Ken Mantell took over as the booker. Ken on many levels. And once again, in my view, one of the greatest bookers ever in this industry. He knew how to handle talent. Nobody else could have handled that era like Ken Mantell. Nobody.
I think they may have been one of the first companies that really started featuring young talent.
I came in.
I'm here to tell you that I am the Texas heavyweight champion. Nobody will beat me. 3 people have tried since I gained the title, and nobody has come up successful.
Iceman, King Parsons, these are young guys coming in.
He was kind of like the soul brother.
He changed his hair. It was all cornrowed, you know, and he even shaved part of it in the middle.
He could talk the talk, and he could move.
I beat everybody that ever put up against me. The whole time I was out there winning, I was boogieing, getting down, doing everything I ever do with anybody I step in the ring with.
We had a hair match, and I went to put the Freebird cream on his hair, and they turned around and put it on to me. I lost all my hair.
Buddy Roberts is covered with his own hair removal cream.
As hot as everybody was at the time, once, as Buddy alluded to, and he lost his hair and started wearing the wigs and the headgear, nobody stole the show like Buddy and Iceman. They were the hottest thing going at that time.
And that stuff just started clicking, and he got over like $1 million. Jimmy Garvin and Sunshine. She was the valet to Jimmy Garvin.
Sunshine taking care of his personal needs.
That's what life's all about. You know, you have to be comfortable. You have to like what you're doing. And I like what I'm doing. I like to wrestle a whole lot.
The fashion plate of wrestling from Miami. That's gorgeous Jimmy Garvin.
He was like one of the hairband guys. You know, he had the big, huge hair. He was always spraying it and fluffing his hair.
I had no idea the impact that he would have on World Class Championship Wrestling as far as drawing power.
Jimmy, why don't we cool down, huh?
All right.
We'll take a swim. You want to take a swim?
I want to take. Okay,
You
we'll
wanna
go
take
for
a
a swim.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey, why don't you go get Jimmy's swimsuit and my swimsuit? Jimmy and I are going to go for a swim before you start your chores, okay?
Yeah, she's on the ball. This girl's on the ball. She has a good coach. Sunshine's on the
Jimmy
ball.
Garvin knew better than anybody how to use the valet.
So then they brought Precious in to be Sunshine's valet, and Precious, you know, obviously Jimmy's wife.
She's going to wash the Lincoln. She's going to make reservations. We're going to San Francisco. And she's going to take my silk blouses to the dry cleaners, go to the health food store for us.
It sounds like a lot. You're not a slave driver. It sounds like you're a slave driver, honey. But, you know, she's kind of like me. You know, we're busy people.
Well, then Jimmy liked Precious more, and of course, you know, that started the girl thing.
Everybody thought that Garvin and Sunshine were married, and they didn't know what this deal was. So we decided we'd have a feature, and I'd go out to the house and interview, see what was going on.
Hello, Jimmy Garvin, please. Hello, can we speak to Jimmy Garvin, please?
What do you want?
I want to talk to Jimmy Garvin about the Sunshine.
Leave him alone.
Is he here?
Jimmy!
Is he? Well, he is here. And we know that the new valet is here. Yeah,
I guess I looked startled because I didn't know what she was going to be dressed in. That thing was just so unbelievably important, because now we know that Precious has taken over for Sunshine and she's in the Garvin house.
If I get close enough to you, I'm gonna scratch your eyes out. And if that little tramp of yours comes near me, I'll pull every hair out of her head.
Jimmy Garvin and Precious, now that was really something special. But I preferred Jimmy Garvin and Sunshine, the original. Sunshine and Jimmy Garvin, that was a match made in heaven. They had more chemistry than Jimmy and his actual wife, in my estimation.
Gorgeous Jimmy feels so good tonight.
I think WCCW was one of the pioneers using beautiful, young, attractive women to help bring in viewers and bring in fans.
Now you've got good-looking girls coming to the ring, so the guys got something to look at now.
Chris Adams put a different spin on WCCW. He was the English gentleman wrestler. It just made it seem more worldly.
I find the wrestling here is a lot rougher, you know, kicking, punching, a lot more physical, I guess you call it dirtiness.
He had style, he had that English accent, he had the moves, he had this karate and judo background.
There is a man who has come in and gained a tremendous amount of popularity very, very fast. An extremely talented young man, a very pleasant personality, and he is very popular with the fans.
Kamala is something that has never been seen in this area. This man is 6'7", 375 pounds. He is a brute. He does not know wrestling as a knowledge, as finesse. The man is simply uncontrollable at times.
Kamala is a classic. Nobody can forget Kamala. Kamala, the Ugandan giant.
Kamala came in there, got over so big. One of the best at his gimmick I've ever seen in my life.
When I got here, Bundy was with me. Then we started bringing in all our superstars. That was the beginning, the inception of Devastation Incorporated.
Not one Von Erich has come forward with any particular type of challenge against Devastation Incorporated, particularly Kamala.
The missing link. I don't know what he's doing now, but he's got Sunshine in his arms.
Missing link. His name was Dewey Robertson. He came up with that. He said, I want to be somebody like a prehistoric guy.
One of my favorites. How do you come up with an idea to grab the back of your head and ram yourself into people?
Flying headbutt. Goodness gracious.
He was strange.
First there came the Kabuki, and then there came the Kamala, and then there came the missing link. I put Kabuki #1, Kamala #2. I think he was third in the group, in my opinion.
I promise you, you got Bruiser Brody anytime you want it.
Bruiser Brody. He was so tough and so strong and so determined. I think when you're that big, probably you can just tear down walls.
Bruiser pretty good care of himself. He was he trained, you know. He wasn't really a drinker, a carouser, or any of those types of things, but he was forced to be reckoned with.
I don't believe this. Bruiser is gonna take him to the ring.
He scared people.
Brody and the Butcher are at it.
Bruiser Brody and Abdullah the Butcher, you know, it was just two guys who were just known for being very sadistic. Brody was just the destroyer, and Abdullah was the butcher. You know, guys talk about hardcore, which I hate that term. It's just, I don't even consider that a style, but that was the hardcore style of that era.
Bruiser Brody was a very larger-than-life guy.
We had, you know, Bruiser Brody on our show, and he was a great draw. Everyone loved him. There are a whole lot of other guys did well there. Probably the most powerful angle we ever had with Freebirds, and lasted several years too.
Von Erich's Freebird rivalry was a match made in promoter's heaven, and a lot of that success should be handed out to the Freebirds, because without a great antagonist, the great rivalries don't exist.
I didn't get where I'm at by having people clapping for me, and I'm not going to get where I want to be by having people clap for me.
You guys were the first real serious threat to the family.
Yeah.
And in saying that, you were the first real threat to Texas.
It's great to be alive and be in Texas. You know, the reason I say this is because we're taking all the titles in Texas. As you can see right here, we got all the gold, man.
And once we got there, and we were from Georgia, and they were from Texas, it was just like a college football game. And it just multiplied.
This war is not between Texas and Georgia. It's between decency and filth.
When an outsider like the Freebirds would roar into Dallas and start knocking the Von Erichs, you know, they might as well have been knocking Sam Houston or the Dallas Cowboys or anything that was Texas.
We are without a doubt the greatest combination that wrestling has ever seen today.
And at that time, people in world class were so proud of their Von Erichs that anybody who cost a Von Erich a shot at the world championship would become the most hated man in the promotion, and Hayes played it to a hilt.
So when he switched heel, the people were ready for him to switch heel, you know. And so then Michael on that interview too, you know, just made it perfect.
We're here to stay and not to play, and if we got to run over the Von Erichs, we'll do it with pleasure.
Michael Hayes was made for wrestling. Get Michael on the microphone, and he just can have the people just livid.
Hey, man, we're running these Von Erichs out of Texas.
I think one of the best talkers ever in the business.
We've been running over people all our lives to get what we want.
Michael Hayes isn't performing a character. That's really Michael Hayes.
Well, he's got his own style just like everybody else, but his style's a little more colorful and more appealing to the ladies.
Michael, the wild one of the Freebirds, kind of the leader of the pack.
Go look at the tapes. You look at how many people were not in the audience.
There you see an excellent shot of the crowd.
Before Michael Hayes showed up, then brought Terry Gordy, then brought Buddy Jack Roberts. Then you watch and see how many rows and seas of people you saw after that. That'll tell you who made world-class championship wrestling, bottom line.
The Von Erichs have always had 3-on-1 or 3-on-2, and I think the people are sick and tired of it. So we got our family, and we are 3, and they are 3. Hey, I'm here for a purpose, baby.
All the right chemistry came together all at the same time in Texas, and that's why you couldn't beat it. It was the best out there.
It was like the Hatfields and McCoys. It was just natural that these two factions were never going to see eye to eye. The fans related to it as a personal, deep-seated hatred between the Freebirds and the entire Von Erich family.
Go home, Freebirds. Who could send us home? There's nobody here that can send us home.
You put the Von Erichs and the Freebirds in the ring, and it would just draw people. People just wanted to watch that match. They knew it'd be a good one.
We want the Von Erichs anytime that they want to sign the paper, baby. I love to beat up on a Von Erich or anybody else that wants to stick their nose in our business.
There were like, I don't know, neighborhood gang bully brothers, you know what I mean? They ran together, they drank together, they traveled together. They were brothers, so you got this 3-on-3 thing. You going, you know, and you got the flamboyancy of Michael.
I got a brother that stands 290 pounds of walking, talking, roping, stomping, graveyard destruction, baby.
You know, in the Von Erichs, you had the guys that could bring in the fans, and in the Freebirds, the perfect combo of the Big Heater and Terry Gordy.
Terry Gordy came behind. Now he's your muscle and your mass.
Terry was just the greatest. What can somebody say about somebody that was born to wrestle? I mean, he had it in his blood. He was so gifted. He was such a big guy, but his heart was even bigger than he was, which is even hard to imagine.
Terry Gordy was God's gift to wrestling. The greatest ever in my mind.
Buddy's the guy you can't beat Buddy.
Buddy was a tough son of a gun. He was just tough as hell.
No matter what you do, you can't beat him, and you couldn't hurt him, and you know, and that was Buddy.
And while Terry and Michael are on the floor, you know, running us into tables and chairs and throwing us out into the parking lot and stuff like that, and Buddy's the one that's in the ring getting beat or, you know, doing the, having the match. So he was a real important part of the Freebirds.
Buddy was kind of the guy to go in there and get bounced all around and make it exciting, and it was just the perfect combo, I think, at the time.
You couldn't hurt him. No complaining, you know, just kept it coming.
Those were the toughest matches I ever had in my 23 years in the wrestling business. Was against the Freebirds against the Von Erichs. The roughest matches I've ever been in.
Yeah, I think that there was an unspoken pact between us that try not to break our teeth out, try not to break any bones, but anything up to that point was
fair
okay.
Game. Yeah. We took pride in that, and I still take pride in that. I will tell you today, nothing has been like that. Nothing.
You couldn't have a bad match with any one of the three. They were all great hands, and my brothers too.
Before there were the Road Warriors, before there were the Four Horsemen, before there was D-Generation X, the first that broke the mold was the fabulous Freebirds, and nobody, and I mean nobody, can dispute that fact.
Tremendous battle, this war of the feuds of the Von Erichs and the Freebirds.
They were just so good together. I think this was one of the better feuds that they had.
We were wrestling in Raleigh, North Carolina, having a tag match. Now, I looked at Dave, and he's white as a ghost. I said, Dave, what's the matter? He said, I feel like I'm gonna fall down. I said, you stay in the corner. I'll work the match. You just stay here. So I worked the match, and I went somewhere else to work, and Dave flew to Dallas. And so I worked the town, I come back, and Dave's gonna go to Japan the next day. So he's sitting at the table there, and I come in, and he's talking to my brother. And I said, Dave, what was wrong with you in Raleigh the other night? And he said, I don't know. I just, it must be the Sting stomach thing of mine. And I looked at Dave, and I said, Dave, don't you go over to Japan and die? Because I don't know why. I was thinking maybe by saying it, it wouldn't happen, because I just had a really, really sick feeling. Looked at Dave, and I kissed Dave on the cheek. I said, don't you die, Dave. He said, I won't give.
His grandmother didn't want him to go because she said he was sick, and he was. He'd had the flu, and he wasn't feeling good. But he had this obligation to go for this big match, and the Von Erichs are very big in Japan.
When we got into Japan, we went to a news conference, you know, we did all this stuff, you know, in character, blah, blah, blah. I'm here to take on so-and-so. So I went on with it. Then you go out, and of course, you drink and you eat. Everybody has a steak and a big meal. Well, David had two. So we get out of there, we go back over to the hotel. Went into his room. He says, you know, I'm gonna call my wife. I says, you know, the night's over. I'm gone. I'll see you in the morning, right? And I left him on the side of the bed where we found him the next day. Somebody from the hotel opened the door, and right there where I left him sitting, and he's gonna make a phone call to his wife, there he was. He was laid back, just laid back on the bed, like he laid back and fell asleep. In come the paramedics, and these guys jumped on him and started trying to resuscitate him. And every time they moved this mask, they were wiping away food. And so I believe what happened was we went out, we ate and drank real big. When we got back to the hotel, he went upstairs and probably purged. came back downstairs, ordered more food. We're all full. We don't understand, how is he eating more food? And right? And he ate more food. So when we went up and sat down, I think he laid back and went to sleep. His stomach ruptured, or he regurgitated automatically or whatever, and he choked on it.
I believe till this day that David's life would have been saved had he had somebody with him, because he ruptured during the middle of the night.
And I wish he would have got checked, because they'd have found that he had an abrasion in his lower intestine. And they called it gastroenteritis. It's supposed to be really painful. And he'd drink, to kill the pain, take pills to get by, and a real unhealthy way to live when you put month after month, a couple of months of that.
See, it was an accident. He was on a long plane trip. He had jet lag. He probably had a few beers. He probably forgot, how many he had taken.
No, it wasn't a drug overdose. It wasn't any of that. His stomach ruptured and he just died.
Man, to this day, if my phone rings before daylight, that feeling hits me again. That could be a tragedy again, I feel like I never really got over that.
Boy, you felt like we were a part of that family. It was really close, and it was just unbelievably sad.
David had too much going for himself, had too bright a future. Hell, he was going to be the world's champion.
What I'm standing here talking to you about right now is probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my entire life. That's talking about a superb athlete and a superb person in his own right. That's David Von Erich. In my mind, if life had not been cut short, the kid would have been world's heavyweight champion.
I always thought that David was the best in-ring performer of all the Von Erichs, including the old man. I'm sure we would have seen if David had not passed away prematurely. One of the great rivalries might have been Ric Flair and David Von Erich.
I have nothing but respect for the memory of David Von Erich. I can tell you right now, he was close to being the world heavyweight champion. With or without the world heavyweight championship, he died a champion, and he will always be remembered as a champion.
David, I think, was far and away the best performer and a real good guy, and a lot of fun to be around. It was very tragic.
I think David appealed across the board. So from that perspective, yeah, I think David was definitely going to be the one to, to go to that next level. And his death was extremely unfortunate. I think it hurt a lot of things in that company.
See, he could have run this office. He learned. He had a lot of savvy about the business and how it works. So had David lived, I believe this territory went on and on and on. But unfortunately, he didn't. When this thing happened, they drew the biggest house at that time, attendance-wise, ever.
The largest crowd ever to see wrestling anywhere in the world is on hand here at Texas Stadium for this great card.
David's death drew a lot of that house. Fritz coming out of retirement drew a lot of that house, because I remember how the advance jumped once he announced he was coming out of retirement.
Fritz Von Erich has returned to Texas Stadium, where he retired for this one time only to team with his boys. And look at him. Fritz Von Erich has the Iron-Clawed Michael Hayes, and you are seeing it right here. The Von Erichs have won the world's six-man title, and 50,000 fans go wild.
That was respect of those 40, 50,000 people that showed up.
It was awesome to realize that this show was as big as anything probably on TV right then.
I think for the fans of Texas and the wrestling fans around the world, that was a very special moment. You got to remember that the fans in Texas and around the world had seen the Von Erich boys grow up before their very eyes.
These boys have decided they're all three going to be world champions, and one of them, Kevin or Kerry, will be the next world champion, because now they plan to do it as a memorial to their brother David.
And so on that day, it made all the sense in the world for Kerry to be in the main event against Ric Flair for the NWA title.
50,000 fans are here for this. This is what they've come to see. The Von Erich dream is underway. And this is the toughest bout probably either of these men will ever be in. And it's the Iron Claw! Kerry's got him. Here's the Nelson pin. 2, 3! The dreams come true! Yes!
You know, the thing that surprised me the most was that he won with a backslide.
Kerry Von Erich is the new world heavyweight champion!
It was the first real feeling of some of the really good stuff that comes from our line of work, that really feel-good feeling where you go, wow.
The wrestlers pouring out of the locker room.
The sound in Texas Stadium was a roar. It was deafening.
50,000 fans standing and roaring.
It's like the people were thinking, finally, one of the Von Erichs won.
For us as fans of the state of Texas, I thought it was awesome.
I'll never forget that. Being in the ring, I ran over to Kerry and jumped on him, and we just, it was a great day, and it was like a great day where I had 45,000 friends there to share it with, too, you know. It was a good day.
Kerry, how does it feel?
No, Mark, you know, it's speechless. Just, it feels great, you know. Today the world belongs to Texas, because if it wasn't for the Texas people, we wouldn't have nothing. And you know what else? My brother David tonight, he had the best seat in the house, right upstairs looking down, and just God bless him, man, because he saw everything I did, and we're just so happy.
All right, now Fritz, this has been a goal for you and your family for years. How do you feel?
It's a belt I was never able to get. David was on the way. Kerry did it tonight, all the way 100%, all for David.
I think it was very emotional for the fans when Kerry defeated Ric Flair. And I love Kerry, don't get me wrong, but to me, I didn't care.
No, we were still reeling over the death of David.
We missed David. Plain and simple, we missed David. We knew David should have been there.
It was done in such a manner that it was kind of, well, David didn't get to do it, so Kerry's going to do it. And I've always felt that Kerry was disappointed that it wasn't better accepted, him becoming NWA World Champion that night.
I remember Kerry was kind of, you see the match and you see him holding the belt up in the ring, but it was almost subdued.
I really thought that that was going to be basically the beginning of a new era. I really thought that, you know, that Ric Flair was pretty much passing the torch, so to speak, to Kerry Von Erich, and that Kerry Von Erich was going to be a long-term champion. I think Kerry was a great performer and a great wrestler, but not a good businessman. It's not just about going out on television, seeing the fans, signing autographs, having great matches, holding the belt up, and being a star. There's also other responsibilities that go with that. There's responsibilities of, first and foremost, being reliable, making your bookings, being where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there.
I think there may have been some issues about Kerry's reliability.
And I think that really cost him a long-term title reign. You might have the world champion booked and you didn't know for sure if he was going to be there or not. And they just, you know, you could not risk that with that title.
I had left, as I had said, with the Kabuki because of the payoff and difference in direction where they wanted to go. And I got a phone call from Fritz Von Erich, and he said, how would you feel about coming back to Texas? So he told me, he said, I'm having some problems with Ken Mantell. I don't trust Ken Mantell. I worry about Ken Mantell and Bill Watts. I think they might be trying to make a move on my office. And I would like for you to come home and sort of keep an eye out on the boys and what's going on. And he said, I have a guy here by the name of Chris Adams that at the time really was comparable to the Von Erichs in popularity.
Coming into the ring, Chris Adams and Kevin Von Erich.
Fritz Von Erich wanted Chris to make a switch and become a heel.
Chris is upset with Stella May. Stella May pulled the leg out from under Chito Hernandez. And Gary Hart evidently talking rather strongly to Stella May and Kevin. And, a super kick on Kevin Von Erich.
He asked me, he said, would you take Chris under your wing, and try to get the switch? Because that's very hard to take a good guy and make him a bad guy.
And now, Kevin is in trouble and Chris just walks away. A strange turn of events.
Everybody's asking me, hey, Kev, what happened to Chris? What's the matter with him? Is it money? Is it Gary Hart? That's probably a little of both.
Chris will be that way.
For everyone that thinks that Chris Adams made a mistake and that Chris Adams is a traitor, he ain't no Benedict Arnold.
Is jealousy a motive for something like that? No way. Man, he's got some screw loose upstairs. All he needs is a good bash in the face.
You know, since I have been with Gary, I have had a real super streak of success. I do think that I deserve to be where I am right now.
I'm going to embarrass you in front of your brothers, in front of your father, and in front of everybody here.
We like to wrestle really snug. A lot of people would call it stiff, but it makes great TV.
Kevin Von Erich beats Chris Adams.
I'm going to make you a deal, and I'll tell you what. You fire Gary Hart. Get rid of him, and I'll try to bury the hatchet and forget it ever happened. Be water under the bridge.
And Kevin Von Erich hit from behind by Chris Adams. And hammering the chair on Kevin Von Erich has gone absolutely crazy here.
We had quite a few shoots in the ring, but we respected each other because of that.
Chris became a great opponent for the Von Erichs. Chris Adams was very unique.
A member of the famous Von Erich professional wrestling family is in critical condition at this hour in Baylor Hospital. 21-year-old Mike Von Erich is suffering from toxic shock syndrome.
Tom Landry, the coach for the Cowboys, was a friend of my dad's and came back from Israel with his wife Alicia and told my parents that everywhere they went, people were talking about Von Erichs. So my parents went over there, and sure enough, the whole country was like, really into it. So we had a tour over there. Mike and me were the first to go over. And so Mike's wrestling Gino Hernandez in Tel Aviv and popped his shoulder right out. So we flew Mike back to Texas and operated on his shoulder. And in the incision, he got toxic shock syndrome.
He probably had a small infection in the area of the surgery, but as a result of having a particular kind of bacteria that elaborates a very potent toxin, he's had a lot of symptomatology and problems with damage to many organs as a result of this toxin.
The doctors even told us to go up and say goodbye to him, and he pulled through. Mike's the only one of all of them to live. The reason Mike lived through that is that we prayed so hard with our faces on the carpet, just begging God to not make this come about. We couldn't lose another brother.
Last night was really scary. I mean, scary to the point of where it was almost hopeless. Folks, let me tell you, a miracle took place last night, just that we have Mike with us today. And we really feel fortunate, and we feel like things are going to take a definite upward turn.
Now, Dr. Bill Sutker is a genius and a brilliant doctor, but I think that it was a miracle that Mike lived. I really do.
He was in the hospital for multiple weeks. He had a temperature of like maybe 1.7, 1.8, something like that. Really fried the kid's brain.
He said he's going to have some really lasting problems from this. Everybody thought he was going to die.
The power up there was great. He answered our prayers. He's brought Mike back to us. Let me just say this about Mike. He is a champion, and this boy will come back. It may take time, The big thing is we have him back now. The other things are nothing compared to what we just went through. And Mike will be back. You take that from his old dad. He'll be back and he'll be a champion again.
It took forever, a year before he could come back.
He just didn't have the spark that he used to.
He was never the same kid. Never the same person that he had been prior to that terrible illness.
I'm pleased to present to you a living miracle. Welcome to the Cotton Bowl, Mike Von Erich.
You give Mike a few months, he'll be back just like he was before. But we thank God, we thank all of you people for your prayers, just like old Mike said. Without him, Mike wouldn't be here with us today, and there's no question about that in my mind or anybody else.
It is certainly a tremendous day, and I think it's a good chance here and time to welcome in Lance Von Erich, Waldo's son, and the cousin to Mike, and your nephew.
We had a wrestler come in, Kevin Vaughn. Dad wanted to call him a Von Erich. All the family was against it. None of us wanted that to come about. We were trying to run 3 shows a day with only 2 wrestlers, so one of us would have to work twice every day. And so Dad thought we needed the extra help. Well, the fans didn't buy into him. They didn't believe in him. Lance didn't have charisma.
Kevin Vaughn was a local high school athlete. So they took this kid from here and said he was Waldo Von Erich's son. On my return to Texas, I had a lot of people come up to me on my way into the arena saying, "What do you think of Kevin Vaughn?" And I said, "Who?" And they said, "Kevin Vaughn." I said, "I don't know who you're talking about." "Oh, he's Lance Von Erich. The Von Erichs lie. We don't like them anymore because we thought they only told the truth, but they lied."
He's a handsome young man.
He was a good-looking guy. He was a good-looking guy. But the underlying factor being that for the first time, something the Von Erichs had said to be true was an out-and-out lie. With Kerry losing the belt, with David's death, people could overlook that. But when you lie to them and you present someone as an authentic Von Erich, and they're not, it didn't do any good. It hurt quite a bit.
He was a good athlete. He looked good, but he didn't have the passion. He didn't have the heart. And one of the worst moves Fritz Von Erich ever made in his career.
On Lance, yes ma'am, it is true. He is not related in any way, shape, or form to the Von Erich family. Because of several past recent events, our association with Mr. Vaughn has been officially terminated. And I don't plan to mention this boy's name again.
Comparing the Von Erich clan to Gino Hernandez is like comparing a single-engine plane to my Learjet. Everyone knows that I had to buy a Learjet because flying commercial, go through in the airports, women are ripping on my Xenia tuxedos and trying to rip on my Brioni suits and touch my beautiful body.
Gino was a beautiful young man. Tremendous personality for what he was doing, and he could do anything.
Let me tell you, we've told you before, we're bad, we're real bad. Let's go. We're bad to the bone.
All right. They're bad to the bone. Well, there they go. Chris Adams and Gino Hernandez. See you guys.
I'm not sure everybody bought it with Chris. He had a hard time being nasty like Gino did. He couldn't overcome the Von Erichs, who were #1. And so he thought he'd go bad guy with Gino, and they'd make a pair and really do well.
You know what, Bill? I've always told you people the truth. You know, I told you I was the best-looking wrestler. I am. I told you I am the best wrestler, and I am. I told you one time that I was not under the shadow of the Von Erichs, and I'm not. And I told you one time that I didn't need Gary Hart, and I don't need Gary Hart.
Both of them were so good, so essential to wrestling. When they wanted to be, they were just excellent.
People would be jumping over him, trying to punch him and stuff, and they had good heat.
For your information, Kerry Von Erich, I am the champion. I'm your champion, and I'm surprised that your baboon brain is ignorant enough to get up here and say, put my name on the dotted line, because you know I'll put my name on any dotted line anytime.
You've seen the hair match. One of the great episodes. My gosh, just unbelievable. You would have thought they didn't know that they were going to lose their hair. If you knew Gino, he lived it up over the top. He invited us out one night. We were going to do a little feature at a nightclub, but it erupted into a terrible situation, and we had to get the heck out because he just like he was in the ring, just absolutely incorrigible and out of control and just ready for a fight.
Shut up!
I liked all those guys.
Look out! We may see some hair. Oh no!
They did some kind of scenario where Gino had blinded Chris.
We've come out to see Chris Adams off as he leaves for England. He's been in seclusion since he was blinded and now preparing to head off to his homeland. And Chris, we just came out to tell you goodbye, and we're very sorry that...
That was the one that I didn't like. I thought we were way over the edge of indicating somebody's blind when they really aren't, and we knew that.
Chris was excellent in that ring. He was a tremendous worker, tremendous. Gino Hernandez became a very, very good wrestler, very good worker. But then he had a problem, and this problem is a big, huge black cloud that started coming in the 1980s. DRUGS, drugs.
We've reached a milestone, a sad moment in world-class championship wrestling. Gino Hernandez is dead. He was found this past week in his apartment. Gino was 29 years old from Houston, Texas. For 10 years, he has given us, this brash young man, an excitement, a frustration at times, but a personality that beamed across the television sets and the arenas that we view and that we watch world-class championship wrestling.
Gino Hernandez was a natural in the business. He was great on the microphone, and he just had a personality that was made for wrestling. He was really hateable, you know, to the people, but he was really a good guy. He was a really good guy, but he'd gotten into the drugs too. You know, he was into the cocaine. Gino was worried about being killed. Somebody was hiding in his car in the back seat, and the guy ran off, and so he went and bought a gun, and he was worried about somebody killing him, you know, and sure enough, I was in Japan, and one of the guys told me they found Gino Hernandez dead, a cocaine overdose, but they found the cocaine in his stomach. So I don't think people really drink cocaine, but he did, and it killed him.
I met Gino and took him under my wing. He was just a lost soul that I couldn't bring back. And I tried. I really did. So sad. He was just everything you could want. But he had demons, and demons just wouldn't let him go. No matter what I tried, I couldn't chase him away. I loved him to death. And he died way too soon. And I feel responsible in many ways that I couldn't get him away from them demons, but I couldn't, but I tried. He knows I tried. I can't have a picture of Gino. I can't look at Gino. I have a lot of pictures of a lot of my guys, but I can't have one of Gino. It just upsets me too much.
It's hard to really find the words to make the meaning or make the feeling come out right when you talk about someone like Gino Hernandez, man who lived the life in the fast lane and loved the life in the fast lane. The man's seen everything he wanted to in 29 years, seen a lot more than a lot of people say. He'll be gone, but he surely won't be forgotten. Gino, live on.
The devil has emerged at Will Rogers Memorial Auditorium. The fabulous Freebirds have hit the ring. I don't believe it. The crowd is aghast. Kevin is thrown to the orchestra pit. Hayes, Gordy, Roberts coming from the parking lot during the commercial break. Nobody can believe it here. Nobody.
Freebirds, oh my Lord. You never knew what was going to go off. Golly, they were just crazy. You were a little bit worried if you went out on their features because you never knew what they were trying to prove. They were fantastic.
All the girls around the world love that steroid-free Kerry Von Erich. Well, you know what? He's beatable, he's gullible, and he's just as stupid as he looks. It takes him an hour and a half to watch 60 Minutes. You know,
Michael was one of the greatest talkers in wrestling. I mean, he was on the lines of a Dusty Rhodes or Roddy Piper. I mean, Michael was really, really special.
you want to get rid of Bam Bam? Because that's our big gun. You want to get rid of Buddy? And you want to see me out there by myself because you hold me responsible. You hold me responsible for what happened to your punk kids, your teenage punks.
He had a lot of things to say about Fritz, and Fritz liked him a lot. He really liked the Freebirds because they drew him a tremendous amount of money.
Freebirds invited me out to lunch one day. And we went in and I sat out and we're going to have lunch.
You guys going to eat?
Hey, you want a biscuit?
No, I guess not. It looks like good food, yes.
Mercer, why don't you go get us some ketchup? Help her out, man. Make yourself useful.
You know, the Von Erichs would go to a nice restaurant. You met them Freebirds, you're down at some dumpy diner someplace. If they were hungry, they might go over to a dumpster and search in there for something to eat. I'm glad they're not around anymore for me to get hurt.
It felt good to come back and draw money again with the Von Erichs, but make no mistake about it, it was never the same. It was never the same. It never had the same pizzazz. It never had the same pop. The bloom was off the rose.
The World Class Wrestling Association is going to recognize the holder of the American belt, Rick Rude, as our world heavyweight champion.
Well, in 1986, you got to remember, that was the time that WWE was starting to just grow tremendously. The NWA was failing. The AWA was doing an independent promotion on their own. World Class thought they could do the same thing and kind of make their own champions and go their own directions.
In '86, we did pull out of the NWA, but the reason was the demand was for a different type of wrestler in that day, I think. I think the people had seen a quicker pace, and the NWA wasn't really doing that, and we wanted to do something else.
Fritz felt that the National Wrestling Alliance didn't want to give Kerry the belt back. I believe it was Fritz's decision to show them that he could live without the National Wrestling Alliance. I was totally against it. After all those years trumpeting the importance of being a part of the National Wrestling Alliance, and then one day just come out and say, we're not part of that anymore, and here's Rick Rude.
And everyone's been asking me since I became the world champion, has our lifestyles changed? Well, no, our lifestyle has not changed. We've always lived life in the fast lane.
And here's Chris Adams. As much as I love Chris, and as good as Chris was, he wasn't Harley Race and he wasn't Ric Flair, and neither was Rick Rude. But then what really got bad, they took a mid-card guy by the name of Black Bart. They made Black Bart our world's champion.
World Class wanted to name their own champion. They thought that they could make the World Class champion as big as the NWA champion. And it certainly gave the Von Erich boys an opportunity to be the recognized world's champion.
And right here with us, Kevin Von Erich. First, let's talk about Kerry. He's had an operation on his fractured leg. How's he feeling?
Well, he had a motorcycle wreck, but everything is going to be just fine. It was a compound fracture of his leg.
I get a call that Kerry had been in a motorcycle wreck. He'd run into a car. First, he had 15 hours of microsurgery, attached all those little vessels and everything back.
Within 3 months, I'll be back in the ring full speed. I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to rush this thing. I'm going to come back in better shape than I ever have been. And I don't want another injury like this. Motorcycles are silly. I'll stay away from them. Again, thank you for all your support. Thank you for your prayers. And we'll see you real soon.
Kerry got up in the middle of the night, and they had him on a lot of pain medicine, I suppose, so he crunched all that stuff up again, and by then they couldn't fix it, so they just amputated it.
WCCW really took a major hit when Kerry had that motorcycle accident. You know, Kerry was the star. He was the center of attention, and he was the guy that everything was built around. When you took Kerry Von Erich out of the picture, it was a void that was pretty much impossible to fill. Hey, here's the guy that's the #1 attraction in this company. The company, he's carrying it on his shoulders. He should know better than to put himself at risk by riding the motorcycle. That injury that he sustained in that motorcycle accident was something that sometimes outwardly it appeared that he fully recovered from, but I think we in the business knew that he never fully recovered from that.
After the wreck where he lost his foot, he was never the same. Kerry was like Gino. He was a poor soul. You know, the demons got him and they took him away and he never came back.
One day, one of the people who worked for Fritz went to him and said, so-and-so is giving drugs, selling drugs to the wrestlers. They're moving drugs. Fritz didn't want to hear that. He fired the messenger. Drugs were, gosh, they were rampant. It was no secret. They were just doing it.
We knew it was around. But you know, what can you do? I don't know. I never seen it done in the dressing room. I will say that right now.
It was everywhere. I remember you could get it anywhere you wanted, you know. I can't say I wasn't in on it. I was, you know. We were all in on it. Did I think it affected the production and the whole show? No, I don't. I think it was more of a situation where, you know, the guys would get into it afterwards or at a party. It didn't have anything to do with the promotion as far as the company. It wasn't like, you know, they were providing it.
When you go back in there, even though, you know, things went on and you see what was happening, Mike should never have gone back in the ring.
I can't wait till the Cotton Bowl show. I'm going to be there.
Do you have a message for your fans?
Yeah, be at that Cotton Bowl show if they want to see me back.
Mike was an outstanding young man. He interned at Channel 39 before he went into wrestling. Mike took David's place or tried to, but he didn't have the physical ability or the mental attitude toward that. He tried.
I never really thought Mike wanted to be in wrestling. He wanted to hang out with his brothers, have a good time, but I don't think Mike was cut out for wrestling. One day I was called to the office and Fritz said, "Gary, would you look at this?" And I read this note. I paraphrase it. It said, it was from Mike. And he said he was tired of embarrassing the family and that he didn't want to bring any more shame on the family. And he thought it would be best if he ended it all. And apparently he was very sincere because he went to Lake Dallas, got 6 beers, a bottle of Placidils, and a sleeping bag. And we couldn't find him for 4 or 5 days. But we knew he was dead long before the public did.
I think Mike realized that in his mind, he could not live up to that Von Erich idea. And that's what he wrote in the note, you know, couldn't live up to it, even though he'd never lost a wrestling match.
When Mike died, oh man, that just tore my guts out. But grief is like, it's too much for a man to take, but you can't lie down and die. You just got to keep going because, you know, I have a wife, kids, you know, and I have a family, you know, so you got to be strong. It's a high price, but you got to pay it.
That pretty well did us all in when Mike killed himself. It was frightening.
Back in like 1987, Buddy and Terry had gone back to World Class Championship Wrestling. I think Buddy and Iceman and the Angel of Death attacked Fritz, and he had a heart attack.
Oh, that was terrible. It was Ken Mantell. Fritz had hired me to run his business, and Ken Mantell was brought back in. I was called to a meeting for the Christmas show that they wanted Iceman King Parson, Terry Gardy, and Buddy Roberts, the new Freebirds, to really reestablish themselves by beating up Fritz Von Erich in the middle of the ring on Christmas night in the Reunion Arena. And I was totally against it. I said, all you're doing is dredging up old memories. You want the guy to have a heart attack, and then you want to take him to the hospital, hoping Von Erich tragedy, all the TV would jump on it. But it didn't happen because the TV was smart enough to know.
You're out here with the title shot and you can't even ride a motorcycle. So don't you think that you're the man that should be out here?
An uninvited visitor. Kerry Von Erich responds. Here's Buddy Roberts. He's asking for more help. What are they doing to Fritz?
Enough tragedy already in World Class. Let's do some positive things. Why do you want to beat up a 60-year-old man?
Fritz Von Erich is in a dangerous position. I fear for Fritz. Fritz Von Erich, still having difficulty with his equilibrium, is being helped by Kevin and Kerry. Fritz Von Erich is a hero to these fans here at Reunion Arena. Wait! Fritz Von Erich has collapsed here right in front of me. Kerry wants everybody back. Get the people back, for crying out loud. Fritz Von Erich has collapsed. An ambulance unit has arrived here on the scene to the arena. The attendants, along with two doctors who were in the crowd, are ministering to Fritz Von Erich, who collapsed here at ringside after he was trying to get out of the ring following the horrible attack on him by several wrestlers on this Wrestling Star Wars card, namely Buddy Roberts, Terry Gordy, and the Iceman King Parson.
It was just 100% bad.
He never staged a heart attack. But we'd had so many tragedies, the fans thought, heart attack, oh no, what could be worse? Hey, it's his back, it's his rib, it's supposed to be his rib. But the fans, by then, were pretty much freaked out. They thought, what's next with this family, these Von Erichs? What the hell can we expect next? You know, and now Fritz is having a heart attack right in front of us. But he didn't have a heart attack, and he didn't fake a heart attack. No one wanted him the fans to think he had one either. That would be really cheesy to fake a heart attack.
Now, had you done that 3 years earlier, oh my God, that'd have been all over everywhere. Too little, too late. Part of that was done to try to, resurrect, if you will, the Freebird Von Erich rivalry. How in God's name can you resurrect anything to do with the Freebirds without Michael Hayes?
Michael Hayes was the spark. Was Terry Gardy great? Yes. Was Buddy Roberts great? Yes. But without Michael, it was just not the same. Iceman could not fill that void. Fritz came to me one day and said, Gary, selling Ken Mantell a portion of the office. Do you have problems working with him? And I said, yes, I do. I have no confidence in him, and I don't want to work with someone that I can't have confidence or respect, don't trust. So I left once again.
You know, that was a strange day. Kerry and I were in Dad's office. Dad had already stepped out of the business, and Kerry and I were running it. Dad called somebody up to the office, and Ken Mantell came in, and Dad said, y'all, this is Ken Mantell, and we're giving him a third of the business.
In my opinion, Ken Mantell was very destructive in World Class. I think some of the things he did, leaving unnoticed, taking a lot of the talent with him, ran shows, didn't pay the guys, didn't pay a building, didn't pay TV.
I didn't like a lot of people in the business, but I like Ken Mantell.
There was no chance of recapturing the momentum that this promotion once had. I mean, the triumph was already over. The tragedy was well cemented. A number of us went back and tried to live that moment again, including Ken, way too many times. Wasn't going to happen. Over.
In 1988, Vince McMahon and the WWE was pretty dominant in the fact that most of the other promoters felt like they were being, shoved to the side because they just didn't have the firepower to compete with the WWE.
Jerry Jarrett from CWA, Fritz from World Class Championship Wrestling, and Vern Gagne from the AWA decided that they would combine their talents and try a pay-per-view themselves.
That's where the idea of having the Super Clash pay-per-view came about, and having the unification of the titles, so to speak, because WCCW had their world champion. That was Kerry Von Erich. I was the AWA world champion, and I was recognized also in the CWA. Coming into the Super Clash, he's thinking, am I going to let my family down again? Kerry, you are. You're going to lose. I promise you that.
I have such high expectations tonight. I'm planning on taking that title. I've come here for one reason, and that is to show the world that there's only one world champion.
It is still one of my favorite matches of all time, and I think one of the most talked about matches that I was ever in with Kerry was that unification match.
This is a match where two men are going to walk into the ring, both of them with belts. One man is going to walk out with two belts.
Lawler running his tights after something.
And down goes Von Erich. You're right, Lawler reaching into his tights. Oh, Von Erich's busted wide open. Von Erich's cut open. Now he's got it on his forehead. That's where the Iron Claw is most effective.
Jerry Lawler's in a very bad way right now.
Oh, but Marty Miller keeps looking at Von Erich's forehead. Lawler going back into his tights. And Lawler hits Von Erich again. A discus punch by Von Erich. And still Marty Miller wants to check the eye of Kerry Von Erich. These guys are a bloody mess. And there's the Iron Claw again applied by Kerry Von Erich. And there's Marty Miller still checking the eye of Kerry Von Erich. Marty Miller calling for the bell.
The referee stops the match. Kerry Von Erich unable to go on. He cannot perform, cannot see. The referee awards the match to Jerry the King Lawler.
The referee did the right thing. He saved the man's eyesight, because if he had not stopped that match, I would have blinded Kerry Von Erich, I promise you.
In Jerry's view, I think he thought Kerry was impaired.
I can't say for certain that Kerry was under the influence. I just know he was very hyper before the match. And before the match, there was even an incident where he wound up accidentally cutting himself as he was getting prepared for the match, and we then had to incorporate that in the match because it happened right before the match, and as he went to the ring, his blood was pouring out of his arm. You know, it just seemed that he wasn't necessarily exactly as he should have been. But by the same token, once the match started, once the bell rang, he was right there. I mean, I didn't notice any problems once the match started.
The plan all along was for Kerry to get the title back and get it back with even more meaning and more significance. So, I think it was just a grand plan to underscore the importance of that particular title. Lawler could beat Kerry without, and the way they did the match didn't really affect Kerry's image or his status. And then Lawler could talk the fans in the seats, much like Michael Hayes did with the Freebird feud and the Von Erichs. Creative aspects of that whole presentation was a train wreck.
I think it was just too many cooks in the kitchen.
It was a futile attempt at getting back at Vince McMahon.
And it was kind of like three sinking ships, and they just all put all their stuff on one ship and said, well, at least we just have one sinking ship now.
I guess there would be some people who would say that World Class Championship Wrestling ended the day that Jerry Jarrett became the majority owner.
World Class started to spiral down.
Fritz found a sucker to buy his business.
But that involved lawsuits. He got sued by Kevin, but Kerry went along with it.
I was dead set against it. I didn't want to bring Jarrett in at all. I didn't trust him, and I didn't want to do that, but Kerry and Dad did.
I was there the day that the initials were changed, the day that World Class Championship Wrestling became United States Wrestling Association, USWA. And it was odd because the same fans who had stood by the Von Erichs and had supported World Class so thoroughly were actually cheering at the name change. I believe Eric Embry tore down the initials and the crowd went crazy. And I was proud in a sense because it was a well-told story and I was part of that story, but at the same time, clearly something died that day, and I think it was that sense of pride and tradition. And although the company would go on under the USWA banner, it was never really the same after that.
So that was the end of one of the greatest high-profile wrestling companies the world has ever known.
But right now, here he comes in his debut, his very first appearance in the World Wrestling Federation. They call him the Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich.
I mean, it's a whole different ballgame when you cover the WWE.
By then, they were the #1 show by far. Part of me wanted to say, you know, I wish he'd stay here, but the other part of me thought, you know, go up there, hit a homer.
Part of the thing was the boys were always in their hometown area, you know. Get out of there, go up here, work for somebody else. You're not, you know, now you're just one of the boys.
I was hoping that that would straighten him out. I really did.
I think Kerry did amazingly well in WWE considering his handicap.
When you saw Kerry walk through a curtain to come to the ring, just upon first seeing him, you knew he was a star.
From one of the greatest wrestling families in the history of wrestling, Kerry Von Erich.
Tremendous physique, tremendous agility, tremendous ability.
I mean, he just had that X factor that none of us can put our finger on what it is, but all the top guys have, I guess, you know, and Kerry had a lot of it. So when he came here, it was a big deal, you know, and I think the highlight of him coming here was probably winning the Intercontinental title, I believe, from Kurt Hennig.
We have a new champion! This place is erupted!
Again, the Intercontinental Championship is a very prestigious title. It has always meant a great deal in the WWE. But Kerry was not the athlete when he got to the WWE that he was in his early career in World Class. He was older, he had been injured, he had personal issues, and he had been through hell and got a little charred around the edges.
Kerry was involved heavily into the drug culture by that time. Kerry abused steroids. Kerry abused pain medication. Kerry abused Kerry.
After I lost a few of my brothers, every time I go into a ring, I'd look up, I'd see the lights, it'd remind me of something.
There's something magic when Kevin and I are in that ring together.
What was really hard was going in those buildings that we'd been in before, and I remember the kids would always hand us these marks of lots, you know, to sign their autographs, and we'd write on the turnbuckle, "Hi, Kerry," "Hi, "Hi, Dave," and he'd write, "Hey, Kev," you know, we'd write little messages to each other on the turnbuckle. I remember going to towns and seeing "Hi, Kev" written on the turnbuckle there. Man, you know, it's hard to, that's what made, I thought, it's not fun anymore. I don't want to be here anymore, so I got out of it. Well, my little brother Chris had asthma, and he had to take kind of a medicine called prednisone. He wanted to be a wrestler so bad. He wanted to be huge like Kerry, and he wanted to be quick and have a balance and agility, and it just wasn't there.
He was barely taller than the ropes. And I think he tried really hard, and that it ate him up that didn't happen.
He was prone to fractures, so he couldn't take the pounding and the beating.
So we tried to get him to maybe draw cartoons in the program or something, you know, or we found little things for him to do, you know, in the show, but he wanted to wrestle, that was it. So we started wrestling, and we're in the ring one night, and so he was threw a drop kick, and when he came down on his hands to break his fall, I saw an arm go. I mean, it V'd, you know, both bones broke. So I said, "Chris, tag me." And he said, wait. He wanted to do something else in the ring. I said, "Get your butt over here right now." And I pulled him to me and tagged him, you know, and Hell, he wanted to keep wrestling. He's tough inside, but he just wasn't gonna happen. It wasn't in the cards for him.
A couple of weeks later, I'm coming home from a show, and I'm listening to the radio, and I heard Von Erich tragedy strikes again. Chris Von Erich found dead.
His whole life, all he could dream of was being a wrestler, and so the fact that that wasn't gonna happen made it where I think he just didn't want to be alive anymore. And then there were drugs too. And when there's drugs, there's no logical thinking, there's no rationale. That night that it happened, I was staying the night out on the ranch in Tyler. And I could hear his motorcycle up in the woods. So I drove up there, and he was all by himself in the woods. And I said, "What are you doing out here in the woods, Chris?" And he said, "Can't I be alone?" So he said, "You found my note, didn't you?" And I said, "What note?" And he said, "Just get out of here." So I went back up to his house, and there was a note on his bed, and it was a suicide note. So I hauled ass back up there to that hill. And when I got there, he was laying on the ground, and he's just kind of choking a little, you know. So I thought that maybe he'd taken some pills or something. So I hooked my arm around his and went to lift him up, and my thumb went in the hole, and I could tell then that, you know, with all that hot blood on my thumb, I thought, he shot himself in the head. My mother was with me too. No way for me to protect her from that. You know, she saw it, and terrible night. And I think to myself, if only I could have got up there quicker, you know, or if only I hadn't have left, you know, but no, that's not the way it worked. Too bad.
Lord, please don't take any more of my children.
It just seemed that there was a controlling negative providence that said, okay, you've had the glory, now let's see if you can handle the pain.
I was just in another world. I couldn't believe it. He was gone.
When Kerry killed himself, it was actually in the newspapers and everything. I mean, it was a bigger story.
You know, he had been put in that position where he had abused and been caught abusing these painkillers.
I believe had forged prescriptions for a lot of painkillers, and he had been arrested for that and was probably gonna go to jail and spend some time in jail, and he couldn't take it and just shot himself.
I think Kerry thought that I've humiliated the family so much now, and that I think Kerry killed himself out of shame and guilt too.
I think he was thinking of his fans when that happened, that he took his own life rather than put his fans and his family through the embarrassment of a trial for, you know, over drug abuse.
I'd rather die than let you folks down.
2 days before he died, he had tried to reconciliation with his wife and his children, and that did not work out. And he was very, very despondent.
And he gets his gun and goes out on his father's land with his father at the house, and he shoots himself in the chest.
Kerry had bought Fritz a gun for Christmas, the Christmas before. And he asked his father, he said, "Could I take the gun out and do a little target practice? I'll come back after a while and we'll have some dinner." So Fritz said, "Sure." And Kerry went back into the field. He jumped on his truck and he drove back into the field, and a couple hours went by and Kerry hadn't come back. It began to get dark, and Fritz sort of got concerned.
Remember that this one glove laying here and that Jeep was right there. I just almost knew Kerry had done it.
There's a big tree, a big, huge tree that the boys, all of them, Kevin, Kerry, David, Mike, Chris, all would play in when they were children. And that's where Kerry went. He went to that tree and he sat down and put the gun to his heart and pulled the trigger, blew himself away.
I've been told that he did leave a note that he would join his brothers on that particular day that I'm talking about.
I'm sitting at home, I'm watching TV, and it pops up on the screen. Von Erich tragedy. Kerry Von Erich kills himself at his father's ranch.
I felt like there had to be some reason for all this. Oh, it kept happening.
That was probably the most shocking one of all, because Kerry was bigger than life.
I guarantee if Kerry was here now, he would tell you right now, suicide is no option at all. Please, no one do that. You'll put your family through so much hell. You don't want to do that. So that was Kerry. That's why he did it. The shame, the guilt.
You know, I've been a big brother all my life, and now I'm not even a brother.
Our fans are really loyal fans. You know, they hurt with us. And one death, they hurt with us. 2 deaths, they're still with us. 3, 4, it starts to get too painful. The houses started tapering off with us, you know, and the crowds weren't like they'd been before. It used to be record crowds. Every week we'd break last week's record, and it got to where after all the deaths, the people quit coming. I think it was because it was uncomfortable for them.
I think it's silly to say there's a curse or anything else.
I think it's a tragedy, but not a curse.
I mean, you can look back and see why it happened. Here are a bunch of young kids who were in a business that propelled them to a level of success that nobody could imagine. But without some guidance and without reins put on somebody in that situation, a lot of people, you know, can stray and can start to get into bad things, and that's what happened. And I think the Von Erich's a prime example of that. I don't necessarily think it's a curse as much as it is a public service announcement for kids. It's a don't do drugs.
I think anything that happened to us, we brought on ourselves. You know, it was the 80s, and it was wild, and everything we did to the max. But then again, all young guys, all dead before they're 30. It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
I think the downfall of WCCW was just simply it had run its course.
I think it was just the rise of the other promotions that ended up hurting WCCW, like every other promotion.
And you take the Von Erich boys out of world class, and you take the heart out of world class, and that's what happened.
The Von Erichs died off, and the show died, slowly went away.
It was time for it to go down. We didn't pretend to be anything we weren't, you know, and when we died, we were dead, you know, and it was really over, and so just as it grew, it died, you know, and so that's kind of the way it was. It's not anyone's fault except just the way the pages turn, you know.
World class will always be remembered for the highs and the lows, the joys and the sadness, and all the great talent that was a part of it.
Passionate crowds.
The roof is being blown off the sportatorium by this crowd.
Great rivalries, bringing the action into people's living rooms the way it had not been seen before.
It was the quality of workmanship, and that's what made WCCW explode.
There's never been a dynasty like the Von Erichs, and probably never will be again. But there'll always be that dark cloud hanging over them.
With all that tragedy, how could you ever find any good in it? I mean, you can talk about things that were good along the way, but at the end of the day, it was a very tragic, very sad situation.
I hope that the wrestling fans remember the Von Erichs as a vibrant, exciting wrestling territory and not for funerals and premature deaths. That would be a shame for that legacy, a true shame.
And one word is magic.
The world-famous Sportatorium. If it's there, it's the best in professional wrestling.
The Fenway Park of professional wrestling. The day has come, and the dream has come true. World-class championship wrestling shows you why it's #1 with this kind of excitement from this kind of talented individuals.
I count the whole thing as positive, really. You know, that if I look back on the whole thing, I'm grateful to have lived 25 years with such great great brothers. And so I consider myself a lucky guy, believe it or not. That might be strange to hear, but, you know, so I didn't get to keep them as long as I wanted. You know, I still got to have them as long as I did. So I call it a good day. I call it a good life.